Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 5 again and the whole Austin Evans testing debacle, which I covered in a video initially on Monday. However, since then, a lot more information has come to light, as well as statements from other credible outlets that do very, very good in-depth testing, the likes of Digital Foundry, as well as Gamers Nexus. Digital Foundry has already published an article as of yesterday by Richard Ledbetter, and they are planning a full review and video, it sounds like, in the very near future. So we've got some new information regarding that and some more stuff on Austin Evans, which kind of makes it look like he was blatantly lying in the video based off of things that he's said in the past about the Xbox Series X, who he seems to always be praising and kind of putting down the PlayStation 5. So let's get fired right into all the information that we have up to date on this whole situation. But first, today's video is brought to you by Prime Tech Mart, where you can grab software products like Windows 10 Pro licenses for extremely cheap. They've also got Office products and Vizio, as well as many more. You can save a lot of money on these keys with something like Windows 10 Pro. You can grab for just $21.43. It's a lifetime activation, so you don't ever need to renew it. You don't need to create an account with them in order to be able to buy it, and you get your key in just a matter of seconds. And if you hit up the links down in the description below and you want to save yourself an additional 20% off of any software over there, just go ahead and use my code JP20 at checkout, apply that, and it'll drop down 20%. So here on Windows 10 Pro for $21, we drop that down to $17, and you're fully activated for life. For more information, check out those links down in the description below along with the coupon code. Now, if you remember in that original video, the biggest assertion that I was making is that his testing of the heat and thermals of the system was not the correct way of testing, because it's factually not. Even though the system showed to have a smaller heatsink, which you would think would do a worse job of cooling it, it also had a better looking fan on it, and the system was pushing out more heat from the exhaust, which anyone that knows anything about thermal testing for PCs would know that that means that the internal components of the system are running cooler. But this is the only thermal testing that he has done, and up until now, he's the only person that we've seen in the public actually doing thermal testing. So I want to point you over to this article on TweakTown, which was actually from December of 2020, tested on the launch system of the PlayStation 5, where they compared liquid metal versus thermal paste on the system. The actual PS5 ships with liquid metal, and they replaced it with thermal paste to see what the end results were. So let's go ahead and read a quote from that article after they completed their testing. They said, "The PS5 with thermal paste pushed out cooler airflow, but it was louder and its fans revved more erratically. The PS5 with liquid metal, however, outputted more heat because it was conducting more heat from the SoC, the system on chip." That's the APU, the GPU, CPU that basically run the PS5. "The liquid metal is more efficient at pulling heat generated away from the processor, which is then dissipated by the heatsink and blown out the back by a powerful 120mm fan. Thus, more heat is processed out the back of the system. To summarize, the PS5 with thermal paste had cooler exhaust, but it was hotter where it counts most inside the console." So this is just a different type of thermal testing. You know, they obviously weren't changing the thermal paste or liquid metal in Austin Evans' video, but this is just a clear-cut example of how when thermals are tested properly, and you can see that when more heat is leaving the system, the internals are running cooler, which completely contradicts everything that Austin Evans said in his video and has continued to defend in a pinned comment on the video. And he is just standing on that hill, and it's kind of seeming like he's going to die on that hill because it is factually incorrect and he should know better. But more than likely, he is just lying about it because a video has come to light from back when the Xbox Series X came out from the YouTube channel by the name of King Thrash Gaming. I'll have a link to his video. It's only about a minute and a half, and it just shows some highlights bouncing back and forth between his Series X videos from Austin Evans and the most recent PS5 video. Here you could see, in this image, you could see the Xbox Series X running at 55 degrees Celsius, which was the exact temperature that the new updated version was running at. However, in his video about the Series X, he makes a completely different conclusion at the end and ends up praising the Xbox Series X for not having any degradation in performance in any way whatsoever, even though in his video on the updated PS5, his final conclusion was the exact opposite of that, is that now that it's running at that temperature, we're going to see a degradation in performance, even though the clock speeds on these systems don't work like that.
So potentially long term, especially as you imagine this gets started to get caked in dust and whatnot, you've got less fins, less mass, you could actually lose performance. I will just say anecdotally, while you can obviously see the temperature, if I put my hand near it, it's toasty. Like, it's definitely kicking out some real heat. I think so far, it's okay. I'm not super worried. I don't think there's any argument that this is a worse console, at least for thermals and for the cooling. I'm gonna say I'm impressed. I actually thought that this would be a much more difficult challenge because you gotta consider that this Series X is pulling some serious power. PS5 is exposed. PS5 is exposed.
So let's shoot over to the article from Richard Ledbetter, who you guys probably know from Digital Foundry videos, who also writes articles on Eurogamer.net, which I believe is associated directly with Digital Foundry. It's sort of like the website version of Digital Foundry, more or less. So in Richard Ledbetter's article, there's a couple of key things I wanted to point out on here. He says, after all, if there was an overheating problem, you would assume that the fan would speed up to better expel the heat. Secondly, the new fan may be doing a better job of pushing out the hot air and may simply be quieter than the original in the first place, which we saw. The updated version that Austin Evans tested was running quieter and pushing out more heat. He again goes on to say, it's a new part after all. The final theory, which is perhaps somewhat less plausible, is that a smaller heatsink based on materials with a lower overall thermal conductivity has been redesigned in such a way to make it more efficient, which he points out that's probably the least likely of the situations, that the newer heatsink, even though it's smaller, maybe has better thermal conductivity. But I still think, and I agree with his assertion, that probably it's more likely the fan is better, which you can clearly see when we looked at the side-by-side comparisons. The new fan is way better than the original fan. Having the extra surface area is going to push out more air, and it'll run quieter, which is exactly what we saw. He then goes on to say, this is pretty much the same max power draw as my launch PS5, because he was testing power draw on the system, and he said this strongly suggesting that the main processor has not been changed, but crucially, the acoustics of the new console have not adjusted at all to any noticeable degree in the hours that the scene has been running the processor flat out. Whether the machine is hotter or not is still to be tested, but logic suggests that if the new cooling assembly was not up to the task, the fan would be increasing in speed and volume to expel the buildup of heat. This does not seem to be happening, and hours on, the power draw is still consistent too. So everything that Austin Evans is asserting, that if this thing was running hotter, the fan would need to be cranking up more, which contradicts everything he says, because it's not. It's actually running quieter, it's pushing out more heat, and as we discussed with other testing from Tweaktown on the thermal paste, and what pretty much everyone knows about thermal testing in PC hardware, which applies directly to console hardware as well, is that more heat out of the system is less heat in. This is just more evidence piling up on top of Austin Evans' assertions that people are still defending vehemently in the comments on his video, on my video, and just trying to make the PlayStation 5 look bad, probably because they're a bunch of Xbox fanboys. And that's really what I hate about the misinformation that he is spreading, because this whole volatile console war bullshit that's going on between PlayStation and Xbox fanboys, and they're both bad. No one is right on either side of that argument, honestly. Sony PlayStation fanboys are just as bad as Xbox fanboys, but this is the type of bullshit that those people who don't have as much knowledge about PC hardware as, maybe a lot of people watching my videos, they will use that as ammunition for years to come. Anytime they get into an argument online or in person with someone that likes Sony and they're an Xbox fan, they're going to say, oh, well, the new revision runs hotter. Didn't you hear from Austin Evans? It runs hotter. The new PS5 is worse. What do you got, the new PS5? It's so much worse. You obviously know that's going to happen. You can see it coming out of the Xbox fanboys' mouths already, because it already is. It's already happening on Reddit, forums, comment sections, Twitter. Everywhere I've seen, there are people defending this bullshit just because they don't like Sony for whatever reason, because they chose to buy a different plastic fucking box. I did also see a reply to people that were tagging Gamers Nexus over on Twitter, where they talked about how this is not the way that you're supposed to test hardware for thermals and all that stuff like that, where someone tweeted out the picture of the Austin Evans comparison with the heatsink, where Nexus replied that a lot less copper doesn't mean worse cooling. Where is the 3 to 5C number from? Is that from a real test by someone? Sony? Question mark. And then he goes on to say the variation is from that's not how you test temperature of device. Kind of a little bit broken up sentence there. I guess he made a misspelling, but or a mistype in his grammar. But basically he's saying is that is not how you test the temperature of a device, which anyone that's ever done hardware testing already knows that. And Austin Evans should know better and probably does, but he's lying. Here we have another reply from Matkata99. You are absolutely right. If we assume the load in both case scenarios is the same and they haven't changed the SOC, seeing higher temperatures on the exhaust means that more heat is being extracted and thrown out of the console. So time and time again, we're seeing all of this evidence piling up. I was one of the first people to jump on this and talk about it in a video, and I have yet to see a major YouTube channel or tech outlet really come out and actually go at this and look at this thing objectively and talk about it. There's been a couple other channels that I've seen talking about it, but a lot of them just talk about the temperatures and saying if it is 3 to 5 degrees Celsius hotter, it's not that big of a deal, which is true. It's really not that big of a deal to have 3 to 5 degrees Celsius warmer. It's not going to make these systems explode and melt. But that's all they're really drawing off of because they're not getting into the whole thermal testing side of it, which is just makes the whole point of even comparing the 3 to 5 degrees Celsius things completely invalid. So I'm still waiting here to see Digital Foundry, which they say in their article they're going to be working on a full review, which will include thermal testing. I've also heard from people, I haven't confirmed it, but some people said to me that Gamers Nexus was maybe planning on doing a video on the revisioned PS5 as well, which I would love to see. I think Digital Foundry and Gamers Nexus are honestly the top tier when it comes to in-depth hardware testing and honest, objective reviews. I really don't think it gets much better than either of those two outlets right there. Stephen Burke is an amazing individual, really nice guy, happy to call him a friend and colleague in the tech space, and I look forward to seeing them do some content, as well as Richard Ledbetter and the team over at Digital Foundry, and then we could really finally put this thing to bed once and for all, and then we don't have to talk about Austin Evans anymore. Yeah. But that's all I've got for you guys on this. I'm still going to continue to keep an eye on it. If anything new really comes to light where I feel like it needs to be addressed, I might do another video on this again in the future. But please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm sure it's probably going to be a little hostile down there, as some people are just going to think this is like me trying to bully Austin Evans or something like that. Like, no, that's really not the case at all. I just don't like liars, and I don't like people that spread fake news and information just so that they can get clicks, which he is 100% guilty of here in this case. And that video was trending on YouTube for days, and it's been quoted in so many articles as like being gospel. It's like this is actually a thing, that the new PS5 is worse, and it is simply not true. And even if it is true, it hasn't been proven. He has not proven it, and everything that he has shown proves it to be the contradictory of to what his final conclusion is. The new system is not running worse, and even if it is, it's a completely insignificant amount, and we don't know for sure because nobody's actually fucking tested it properly, or at least that we've seen results from. Although I have had people contact me, I'm not going to throw any names out there because I'm not sure when they're going to be publishing anything or if they're going to be publishing anything at all, but the initial testing appears to actually show that at the silicon level, the updated revision of the system is actually running a fair bit cooler. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Again, I don't want to blow the top off of anyone else's news story. Let them do it, and I look forward to seeing that content in the very near future, and I'll catch you guys next time for another video.